Good evening, students. In our today's class, we are going to discuss the different agents of pollination. Okay, agents means the one who is responsible for causing something. Okay, that person or that particular thing is called agent. And what are the agents of pollination? We are going to discuss in today's class. First, let us know what is pollination. The transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma is called pollination. Now, what is anther? Anther is the male reproductive part of a flower and stigma is the female reproductive part of a flower. Okay, the process of transfer of pollen grains from anther, that is the male reproductive part of a flower, to the stigma, that is the female reproductive part of a flower, is called pollination. In simple words, pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma. Okay, now you can see this diagram for the concept to become more clear. So this is the diagram of a flower. These are the different parts of a flower. As you already know that these are the male parts of a flower and this is the female part of a flower. Okay, this is the carpel and this is the androecium of the flower or stamen. Okay, so this is stamen and this portion is your anther, this is filament, this is your carpel or pistil, this is stigma, style and ovary. We already talked about the different parts, male parts and the female parts of the flower in our last classes. Okay, so here in this anther you will see the pollen grains developing. When these pollen grains will transfer from the anther to this stigma. Okay, so this process is called pollination. So pollination happens in sometimes in the same flower or sometimes it may happen in a different flower. That means anther, this pollen grains from this anther can fall on the stigma of the same flower sometimes, and sometimes it may fall on the stigmas of some other flowers. Okay, we will discuss about the different types of pollination in our next classes. Today let us discuss who is responsible for doing this pollination. That means who is going to carry this pollen grains from here to the stigma. Somebody must be there to carry. Okay, so who is going to do that? Let us discuss this today. So we are going to discuss today about the different agents who are responsible for pollination. The different agents are wind, water and insect. So these three are the most important agents of pollination. They are your wind, water and insect. Okay, so let us today discuss about first how wind pollination occurs and when wind pollination will occur. See, in all the plants or all the flowers, wind pollination does not occur. Okay, in order to in order to the pollen grains to be carried by wind, some characteristics must be followed, some properties must be followed by the flower. Okay, if the pollen grains of the flower are very light, suppose one flower is there, suppose take the example of a flower, this is a flower, and if the pollen grains of this flower is very light, okay, and if they are non-sticky, and if they are winged means the pollens will have, suppose this is a pollen grain, they will have small wings. Okay, some hairy like structures is there. Have you seen the structure of a dandelion? See, I'll show you this figure. Can you see here? If you blow this dandelions will flow. Okay, they will fly away. So if it is like this, you will see wind helping in the process of pollination in such kind of flowers. Okay, and the anther of that flower must be well exposed. That means this anther in this diagram you can see it is well exposed. Exposed means it is outside. Okay, you can observe. That means it is not covered. If the anther is covered, then wind will not be able to carry. Covered means this petals are there, no, they will have to close and it will have to cover the anther. If it is covering, then you will not see wind pollination occurring. If it is open like this, then only wind can come and blow away, is not it? And moreover, the stigma must also be large. This is your stigma, it must be large and feathery. Feathers must be there so that it can easily capture the pollen grain coming through the wind. Okay, and moreover the flower must have one ovule arranged as inflorescence. The flower must have only one ovule. If more than one ovule are there, then this wind pollination cannot occur. Understood? Okay, so these are some examples of some flowers, some plants where wind pollination you'll see. In corn you will see, in cotton you'll see, and also in date palm. Okay, so wind pollination occurs in some flowers where you will see these characteristics. Now let us know about water pollination. Water pollination is nothing but the pollination which is carried by water. Okay, the examples are bryophytes, pteridophytes, and algae. Pteridophytes, you know, these are the fern structures, okay, ferns, which we in Assamese, if you see, ferns are, for example, this dhekya, which we take as a green leafy vegetable, okay. So these are pteridophytes and algae. Algae, all of you know. So here, water pollination you will see. So where water pollination can occur, if the pollen grains are protected by mucilaginous covering. Okay. Okay, that means it will have to, the pollen grains must have mucilaginous covering. That means it must have some mucus. Okay, mucus means, suppose this is a pollen grain, some oil or jelly like structure must be there, mucus. If it is covered by mucus, then only this water can carry. Okay, so as for example, you have already seen that if you dip some flower or some branch in water, after some days you will see that this jelly like substance or gel like substance forms over that stem or that branch. Okay, the reason is that it produces mucus over it. If it is mucilaginous covering is there, then only this water pollination will take place. Okay, for example, pteridophyte, algae, and bryophytes show water pollination. Freshwater plants, example is your hydrilla and vallisneria. Here you will see water pollination occurring, and in sea grass, for example, zoostera, you will see water pollination occurring. Okay, and main features of wind and water pollination is that produce pollen grains in large number. The plants which can show wind and water pollination, that means the plants whose pollen grains can be carried by wind and water must have very large number of pollen grains. Okay, and they will not produce nectar. Nectar means juices. Okay, suppose this is a flower. You know, here in this flower, some flowers they produce nectar. Nectar is a very strong smell, tasty juice like structure which insects come and take it. Okay, they love to take it. And the flowers, if they produce nectar, then this wind pollination and water pollination cannot take place. Okay, so this is a very important feature, that the plants which will show wind and water pollination will not produce nectar. Because see, if they are going to produce nectar, then these insects will come and insects will carry these pollen grains. But these plants want wind and water to carry their pollen grains, not insects. Okay, so that's why they will not produce nectar, and moreover they will produce large number of pollen grains. The reason is that, see, when wind comes and takes away the pollen grains, or when water comes and takes away the pollen grains, it may get wasted also. Okay, it may fall somewhere else also rather than falling in a different flower. So if it produces very small number of pollen grains, it may get wasted. Okay, it may not go and fall on the stigma of a female flower. That's why it is very necessary for the plants to produce large number of pollen grains. And also these plants do not produce nectar. Understood? And your third type of pollination is by insect. Okay, insects are very important agents in pollination, and the flowers which want insect to be their pollinators, the flowers are very, very large. Why large? Because if they are very small, insects will not be able to see them. Okay, and they are very colorful as well. Colorful because the colorful flower is going to attract the insect. They are fragrant. Very, very beautiful smell comes from those kind of flowers, so that insects are attracted and they will come and fall on it. And moreover, they are very rich in nectar. Nectar means very tasty flower, sweet juices are there in that flower, because this is nectar is the thing which attracts the insects. Okay, and also the pollen grains must be very, very sticky. Now suppose, for example, this is a flower, and suppose these are the pollen grains of the flower, and the insect is going to come, and it will come and take the nectar. Okay, if the pollen grains are sticky, then it gets sticked into the body of the insect, and it goes, and when it goes to some other flower or to the stigma of the flower, it gets stuck there. So in order to happen this, the pollen grains must also be sticky, and the stigma also needs to be sticky in this case. Okay, students? Now let us know what are the rewards for pollinators. Pollinators means the one who is going to do the pollination. Okay, suppose this insect is a pollinator, wind is a pollinator, then your water is a pollinator. See, when this insect is doing pollination, it must also get some benefit, is not it, from that. So what is the benefit that the insect gets? See, the insect is going to get that tasty nectar for its food, and also the pollen grains. These some insects, they take pollen grains also as their food. Okay, so these edible pollen grains, they help the insect by supporting them as their food. And moreover, these flowers also provide a very safe space to the insect, safe place to the insect to lay eggs, because these flowers are this insect is helping the flowers in order to happen their sexual reproduction. Okay, so they also help, the flowers also help the insect by giving them a place to lay eggs, and this place is very, very safe. For example, these are the names of two plants, Yucca and Amorphophallus. These two are some plants which have very beautiful large flower, fragrant flower, and they are rich in nectar, and these plants get pollinated with the help of this insect. So these are different agents of pollination, as you have already read: wind, water, and insects. In our next classes, we will discuss about the different types of pollination. So thank you, students. I will meet you in our next class.